Let's listen to the national news on this bad day for our United States military.
A dozen U.S. troops were killed today after two explosions rocked the area around the Cobble airport, just 5 days before U.S. forces are scheduled to depart for good. A suicide bomber detonating at what's known as the Abbey Gate to the airport, where crowds had gathered. A second bomb struck outside a hotel adjacent to the airfield. In addition to the dead, at least 15 American service members were hurt. There were heavy civilian casualties as well. President Biden speaking from the White House shortly before we came on the air here tonight, saying to the terrorists behind the attack, "We will make you pay," and telling American commanders they will finish the mission. Richard Engel begins our reporting.
It was every soldier and Marine in Kabul's worst fear, an attack where they're most exposed. As troops were patting down an evacuee at a Kabul airport gate, searching for a bomb, he or she, that's still unclear, detonated one, killing 12 U.S. service members and injuring 15.
This is close-up work. The breath of the person you are searching is upon you. While we have Overwatch in place, we still have to touch the clothes of the person that's coming in. Ultimately, Americans have got to be in danger to do these searches. There's really no other way to do it.
At least 60 Afghans were killed. Another bomb exploded a few hundred yards from the first. As ISIS fighters sprayed gunfire, Afghans tumbled, dead and injured, into a sewage ditch. We drove through this exact spot a few days ago, a corridor flanked by concrete blast walls that leads right to an airport gate. The U.S. is relying on the Taliban to pre-screen the crowds pushing to get into the airport, hoping for a flight out of Afghanistan, patting them down before they're checked again by U.S. troops. Today, this staggeringly new and bizarre security cooperation broke down.
Clearly, if Iran would get up to the Marines at the screening at the entry point of the base, there's a failure somewhere. It was a failure by, the Taliban operate with varying degrees of competence. Some of those guys are very scrupulously good, some of them are not.
Just a few weeks ago, the U.S. was bombing the Taliban. But when U.S. troops pulled out, triggering the collapse of the Afghan army, now there's no one left but the Taliban to protect American forces as they leave. ISIS-K, an ISIS offshoot, claimed responsibility. Many of their fighters and other extremists, including al-Qaeda members, were in Afghan jails. But when U.S.-backed Afghan forces melted away, the prisoners escaped. And for the past few weeks have been on the loose. They have one clear target, the Kabul airport, where nearly all the Americans in Afghanistan are gathered and are still gathering until they leave.
Richard, after today's attacks and with the U.S. still expected to be out of the country in 5 days, can the Taliban secure and maintain control of Kabul?
I think they can. They have a lot of weapons. They're organized. They have plenty of fighters. A senior Taliban commander told me that it's the American presence, that the U.S. presence at the airport is like a magnet. It's drawing in crowds. It's drawing in extremists. They think once the Americans leave, the Taliban will be able to reimpose order.
All right, Richard Engel tonight. Thank you. Late today, President Biden vowed to complete the withdrawal mission and to strike back at ISIS. Peter Alexander is at the White House.
Tonight, just 5 days before President Biden's deadline to end America's longest war, the commander-in-chief addressing what is now one of the deadliest days for U.S. troops in the entire 20-year conflict.
These American service members who gave their lives, it's an overused word, but it's totally appropriate here, were heroes. Heroes who've been engaged in a dangerous, selfless mission to save the lives of others.
The president tonight blaming the carnage on the terror group ISIS-K that he's been warning about for days.
We've been made aware by our intelligence community that the ISIS-K, an arch enemy, the Taliban, has been planning a complex set of attacks on United States personnel and others.
And saying this about whether he'll stick with his August 31st timeline to get all American forces out.
We will not be deterred by terrorists. We will not let them stop our mission. We will continue the evacuation.
It's a nightmare scenario for the president, whose handling of the U.S. exit has faced withering criticism. And tonight, there are bipartisan demands for change, including the U.S.'s reliance on the Taliban for security at the airport. Top Democrat Senator Bob Menendez saying we can't trust the Taliban with American security. And Republicans are blasting the president for sticking with a strategy they say has failed.
I think pretending like this could be a success, like this plane could be salvaged, but that's impossible at this point.
Tonight, the president making this vow.
To those who carried out this attack, as well as anyone who wishes America harm, know this: we will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay.
So, Peter, was the president hinting at or explicitly saying there'll be a retaliatory strike against ISIS?
Yeah, Lester, President Biden said U.S. intelligence may have already identified those who organized today's attack and that he has asked the Pentagon for strike options. Still tonight, he warns ISIS-K could try to disrupt the evacuations there in Afghanistan again. Lester.
All right, Peter Alexander in the White House, thank you. Just hours before today's explosions, there were warnings about security threats at the Cobble airport. And that threat continues tonight. Courtney Cubey is at the Pentagon. Courtney, what are you hearing from there?
Lester, there were more U.S. troops killed in Afghanistan today than all of last year combined. With specific intelligence that ISIS-K was planning to strike, inside the Pentagon, U.S. military leaders were bracing for this very attack, and they expect more attacks to come. Despite that, the top commander in the region says he does not need more troops, and the military will keep screening civilians at that airport. The mission to evacuate people continues, the U.S. military on track to leave by August 31st. Lester?
All right, Courtney, thank you for the update. An important distinction worth emphasizing in all this: the Taliban and ISIS are separate, rival movements. The president tonight calling them arch enemies, as you heard. Andrea Mitchell now has more on the ISIS threat.
U.S. officials have been warning for days about the threat from ISIS-K, culminating in a red alert last night for Americans to stay away from the airport gates. A warning that proved all too true today. What is ISIS-K? An offshoot in Afghanistan of the Islamic State that originated in Iraq, created 6 years ago in Pakistan, an avowed enemy of the U.S. and rival to the Taliban.
ISIS is extremely real. We've been talking about this for several days. We saw it actually manifest itself here in the last few hours.
Thousands of hardcore Islamic State commanders were released from jails across Afghanistan by the Taliban in recent weeks, since the Taliban takeover easily melding into the teeming masses in Cobble. Only yesterday, the Secretary of State warned it was a high-risk threat.
We're operating in a hostile environment in a city and country now controlled by the Taliban, with the very real possibility of an ISIS-K attack.
And ISIS-K isn't the only terror threat. The Taliban has named the leader of its most radical branch, the Haqqani Network, to be in charge of security in Kabul. Khalil Haqqani, a $5 million U.S. bounty on his head, brazenly showing up at Friday prayers in Kabul last week. And the Haqqanis have strong ties to al-Qaeda, also in the mix. What's clear is that the Taliban either couldn't defend against today's bombings or won't. Now the question is, how will the president deliver the forceful response he's promised after the U.S. withdraws? Lester.
Okay, Andrea, thank you. In just 60 seconds, my exclusive interview with the Capitol police officer who shot and killed rioter Ashley Babbitt on January 6th. Why he's choosing to reveal his identity. Next.
The Olympics and Paralympics are back.
David, the numbers of people getting out the country in the last couple of days has started to decline, and this event is likely to see a continuation of that. This event underlines the enduring threat of terrorism in the country. Not just ISIS-K, but al-Qaeda are still there, although diminished. And General McKenzie highlighted what he saw as a specific threat against the aircraft, against those evacuation flights, like the one we were on last night, packed with hundreds of Afghans, that someone could get inside, detonate some kind of device, perhaps attack it from the ground. It's already been a terrible day, and the risks are only growing. David?
Ian Pennell leading us off here again tonight. Ian, our thanks as always. And tonight here, the scope of the American loss. We learned just as we came on the air tonight that another service member has died. As I said off the top, 13 U.S. service members killed in this attack.
Jesus.
And we took note today what the general said, how he described what these service members were tasked with doing right at the airport gate in this dangerous mission, their bravery, their risk, and now their families back home forever changed. Here's our Chief Global Affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz.
It is the deadliest attack on U.S. forces in Afghanistan in a decade. And now the families of American service members will get that knock on the door. An officer there to deliver the worst possible news. The Marines and the Navy medic killed today were guarding the airport in Cobble, screening each and every person who went in. More than 104,000 men, women, and children checked for weapons.
This is close-up work. The breath of the person you are searching is upon you. While we have Overwatch in place, we still have to touch the clothes of the person that's coming in. I think you all can appreciate the courage and the dedication that is necessary to do this job, and to do it time after time.
For days, nearly 6,000 American troops have worked tirelessly to evacuate U.S. citizens and their Afghan allies. After the airport was overrun, desperate Afghans swarming the runways, the Marines restored order, securing the perimeter and facilitating one of the largest airlifts in history. Brave men and women consoling traumatized families around the clock, but also becoming a prime terrorist target, the threat growing by the hour.
They're a part of the bravest, most capable, the most selfless military on the face of the earth. And they're part of simply what I call the backbone of America. They're the spine of America, the best the country has to offer.
When I traveled to Afghanistan, American military leaders warned of the danger ahead as U.S. troops prepared to leave. Now it has come to pass. The general in charge preparing the nation for more attacks, more American deaths, and the mission is not nearly over yet.
And so Martha Raddatz back with us tonight as well. And Martha, we know this mission continues until August 31st. The president saying we will get all Americans and Afghans who helped us out, everyone possible in the time allotted. That was slightly different from what we've heard from him before. A clear reference to time running out here. And after these attacks and the U.S. service members lost, the president now asking commanders for a plan to retaliate.
He certainly is, David, and he says they believe they know where the ISIS leaders are. The president saying we will respond with force and precision at the time and place we choose. David?
Martha Raddatz with me all day long here. Martha, thank you, and our thanks to Ian as well. Our coverage of Afghanistan for tonight. We will have much more on Nightline and tomorrow on GMA. But we continue tonight with news on the pandemic in this country. This evening, the alarming new forecast. Authorities now say we could see nearly 100,000 more COVID deaths by just December. The U.S. now recording its fourth day with more than 150,000 new cases in just the last week. More than 12,000 new COVID hospitalizations every day. That's the highest number now since January. The vaccination rate is going up amid all of this. 202 million people now with at least one dose. That's 71% of everyone 12 and older. And tonight here, the CDC continuing to warn about the dangers of using a drug intended for horses and cows, a deworming medication touted on some cable news. ABC's Marcus Moore from Texas Tonight.
The country tonight facing a dire forecast, estimating nearly 100,000 more Americans could die of COVID between now and the 1st of December if current trends continue.
I've seen a lot of people die over the last year and a half, and it is picking up pace. It's never been as bad as it is right now. It's truly awful.
Texas today nearing its highest number of COVID patients. Some hospitals so overwhelmed they're forced to transfer the sick. But in Houston, a glimmer of hope. A long line of cars at this vaccine site as cash incentives and the mounting crisis push more people to get the shot.
Woo! It's over.
Michelle Tate was finally able to get the vaccine after almost losing her life. The 42-year-old mother was waiting to get the shot when she got sick in March. After 3 months in a coma at Houston's Memorial Hermann Hospital, Michelle faced an agonizing road back, learning to walk and talk all over again.
I decided to get the vaccine because I thought to myself, there is absolutely no way that I am leaving the safety of this hospital without being vaccinated.
Florida facing its darkest days as some hospitals in the central part of the state run out of morgue space. Our Victor Akindo is in Miami.
Baptist Hospital is one of the largest in Miami, and over the course of the last 2 weeks, they've seen more COVID patients than at any point in the pandemic. They had to set up these 2 large tents right outside the emergency department to make room for everyone, and inside the lobby, It's now lined with beds.
And with COVID cases surging, federal health officials are once again sounding the alarm about a spike in the number of people using ivermectin for COVID. It's a drug to fight parasites in horses and cows that's been promoted on cable TV.
There's nothing here.
Here in Texas, farm stores are selling out of high-dose ivermectin intended only for animals. The state reporting a 550% increase in calls to poison control.
It definitely could potentially spiral out of control if the misinformation still continues to circulate out in the public.
The FDA warning the public, you are not a horse, you are not a cow. Seriously, y'all, stop it.
David, ABC News has reviewed internal data from the CDC estimating that there's been a 19-fold increase in that anti-parasite drug being distributed in the first week of August. David.
The FDA urging everyone to stop using that drug, Marcus.
My God, that's as bad as Donald Trump saying something about drinking bleach would kill it, or Lysol or something like that he come up with. This is just incredible in what I'm seeing and hearing in regards towards people doing things to themselves that are going to have severe consequences. Lord have mercy. Thanks again for being a part of the Windmill Ministries programs towards us distributing out our information to the general public, those that don't have TV and those that don't have time to watch TV, depending upon their hourly schedule. We want to thank you and good luck to all of us as we end our program to say God bless America, God bless our troops, and most definitely good luck to all of us, and shalom.